Prospect Avenue. Get info you require. Oh, we're gonna skate down to Prospect Avenue, your hockey news supplier.
All right, everyone. Welcome back for another episode of the world famous Prospect Avenue podcast, your definitive source for everything Buffalo Sabres prospects. I'm your host, Chris Baker, here in the bunker in lovely Hamburg, New York. It is late November. Last week, gave you all a doubleheader of Prospect Avenue action, had the standard lengthier version of Prospect Avenue, then followed it up a couple days later with a Prospect Avenue Plus, shorter, quick hit, with some updates, tying up some loose ends on some updates that I didn't get to in the standard Prospect Avenue episode. And we're probably going to go a little shorter, somewhere in between Prospect Avenue and Prospect Avenue Plus this week with some updates. Don't have a ton to get to, but we're going to get right to it. But before we begin, if you could please like this video and subscribe to the Sabres Prospects YouTube channel. You can find the Prospect Avenue podcast on Apple or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you could please leave a 5-star review, it helps the show. You can also, right here on this channel, as well as on Apple or Spotify, find the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show that I do every week, sometimes multiple times a week, with the Athletics' Matthew Fairburn, talking everything Sabres at the NHL level. And didn't get to do a show with Matthew this week. I had some travel. I was away from the bunker. So Matthew and I will be getting together here in the next day or so to catch up on everything Sabres after their sweep of the California road trip. So some good things developing there with the Sabres. And let's bring it back and talk about the development that's happening with the Sabres prospects. And we're going to begin this week by continuing to pump the tires of goaltender Topias Leinonen. Leinonen settling in nicely with his new club in Mora in Sweden's second division Hockey Allsvenskan. And he's just getting better and better as he gets deeper into the season. His game's progressing very nicely. So last Sunday, Leinonen got the crease and picked up an overtime victory over Djurgården, made a really nice save in overtime that actually got him an assist on the OT winner, his first point of the year. And then Leinonen got back in action on Friday, stopping all 30 shots that he faced in a 1-0 shutout victory over Östersund. That was Leinonen's second shutout of the year. So the reports on Leinonen right now is that he's got a really good attitude. He's feeling confident. He's in a good headspace right now, doing all the work that he needs to do to keep improving, and he's getting the results on the ice. And I said it last week. I feel like I need to say it again, that you're starting to see a path for the Sabres to consider offering Leinonen a contract just to bolster their organizational depth at the position. And the reason I keep wanting to impress this upon folks that follow the Sabres prospects is that I know there are a lot of people that just looked at his statistics and were making judgment on Leinonen, perhaps without fully understanding what he was facing in those 2 years, whether it was fighting back from injuries that made it very hard for him to get footing, especially last season, or just the Uvescula coaching staff and their philosophy for how they wanted to manage young goaltenders. And it wasn't a good situation for Leinonen last year. He's got a nice clean slate this year in Mora. And like I mentioned, getting the results, he looks more confident and poised with each passing start. Better positionally. Footwork seems to be improving a little bit. Not overplaying a ton. Still gets caught here and there. But he's making the most of his big frame, and he's making some big stops at key moments in the games. So really good to see Leinonen. For those watching on YouTube, he's not only getting the results, but he's also having fun while he's doing so. So we will keep reporting on Leinonen throughout the year. A lot of hockey left to play, but I can see a scenario where the Sabres look to get him signed and maybe even get him over to Rochester at the end of this year. Just get him some face time. Doesn't even need to play in any games. Get him out there on the ice practicing, getting him some face time to do some on-ice work with Seamus Kodak, an extended stay over maybe the shorter period of time that he does over the summer when he comes over for development camp. get him together with the staff before he goes back over to Europe to continue his off-season training. So we'll see what happens moving forward with Leinonen, but good to see nonetheless. Nice development there. We're going to stay on the goaltending track here. Talk about a couple guys that I may have mentioned briefly in previous episodes of Prospect Avenue, but didn't go too deep on. And we'll start just a short drive north from Buffalo here, up in the Ontario League, where Ryerson Leenders, Sabres 7th rounder, 202nd overall in the 2024 draft, is getting his game in order after a tough stretch to begin the year. Kind of like Scott Ratzlaff last season out in the WHL. Ratzlaff didn't have the greatest start, but then really got dialed in and had himself an excellent season. Leenders maybe looking to do the same here after a little bit of a tricky start with the Brantford Bulldogs. And Leenders was a guy coming over to a new team this season during OHL training camp, went from the the Brampton Steelheads to the Brantford Bulldogs. I always mess that up, but settling in nicely now here as he's gotten into his season. Leenders had a season high 43 saves Thursday against a poor Peterborough squad before stopping 35 in a Saturday night loss to Kingston. Kingston is the first place club in the OHL's East Division, and Leenders right now is in a firm goalie rotation for a Brantford squad that's currently in third place in the OHL East Division. And with Leenders, what you're seeing here is, aside from a pair of wins that he has this season against Kingston, he's mostly picking up wins against teams that are lower in the standings. So you want to see him get more wins against the Niagaras and the Barries and the Oshawas of the world. He's already lost to Niagara and Oshawa once this season. He also has losses against Erie and Windsor and London, who are some of the better Western Conference clubs. So you want to see some wins and some in more pressure situations here moving forward. But nonetheless, Leenders currently sits at 5-6-1 on the year, has a 3.6 goals against average and an .896 save percentage. Leenders hasn't gotten his save percentage above 90% yet this season. But if he keeps playing the way that he has in the past week to 10 days or so, he should hit it, perhaps even in his next start. If the Bulldogs do keep that rotation going, that next start could come next Saturday night in Barrie against a pretty tough Colt squad that is currently tied with Kingston for the best points percentage in the OHL's Eastern Conference. Also, in the CHL goaltending ranks, out in the WHL, talk about Scott Ratzlaff real quick. Talked about him last week, but Ratzlaff came out and he ended his 8-game winless skid on Saturday with a 5-4 shootout victory over a pretty decent Lethbridge squad. It was Ratzlaff's first win since October 22nd. So in a little over a month since he picked up his last win shortly after he signed that entry-level contract with the Sabres. But despite the victory, Seattle remains dead last in the WHL's Western Conference. They're giving up 4.5, nearly 5 goals a game, and that leaves Ratzlaff with a 5-7-1-1 record on the year with kind of a inflated 3.93 goals against average and an .886 save percentage. Mentioned it last week. Want to mention it again. We're looking to see Ratzlaff potentially get traded from Seattle here in the coming weeks as the WHL trade deadline approaches. And looking deeper at the WHL landscape, I'm kind of wondering if an Eastern Conference team, specifically one in the Central Division, could be looking to acquire Ratzlaff. I'm looking at specifically Medicine Hat and Calgary. Those are two teams that I'm kind of keeping on my radar as ones that could afford to add Ratzlaff. Gets the Alberta kid back in his home province to close out his major junior career. We'll see. That WHL Central Division is wide open, but Calgary and Medicine Hat are two clubs that I think it could make sense for them to make a deal with Seattle. So we'll see where that goes. We're going to go over to the NCAA real quick here. Talked about Brody Zemer recently on Prospect Avenue. Just kind of want to follow up on him because he's continued to pull some really nice minutes as a freshman with the University of Minnesota. Over the weekend, he's continued to play with centerman Oliver Moore, who's a first-round draft pick of the Chicago Blackhawks, excuse me, as well as Jimmy Snuggerud, a first rounder with St. Louis. So pulling some nice minutes. And on Saturday, Zemer posted the second multiple point game of his NCAA career, picked up the game-winning goal in the third period, added that to an earlier assist, and he erupted for 7 shots on goal, which was a season high for Zemer, as the number 4 Gophers completed the sweep of Notre Dame. And the more you watch Zemer, the more you fall in love with his game. Not the biggest guy out there, but he's smart and he works hard, and he's really proving to be a clutch player for the Gophers. And he just has the tools that he can overcome faster, bigger guys that he's competing against out there. So I think it's going to be really fun watching Zemer here over the next couple of seasons in the Big Ten, but progressing very nicely here as a freshman. And I've mentioned it before, he's definitely firmly in the mix for some World Junior duty here a month from now. So looking forward to seeing how he does in that selection camp. Also in the NCAA ranks, last week on Prospect Avenue, I mentioned Steven Sardarian. He was on that 4-game goal streak. Sardarian's streak came to an end over the weekend as Michigan Tech was swept on home ice by Minnesota State. But regardless, Sardarian continues to lead Tech with 6 goals. He's got 9 total points through his first 10 games. And more importantly, he's received over 20 minutes time on ice in 6 of his 10 games this season. Reason I mention that is that the transfer from New Hampshire to Michigan Tech, it's clearly working out. He's got more jump in his step this year. You just see it when you watch him play. I know some of it can be attributed to, the weight training that he's done and the work on his body. He's stronger, he's more explosive, but he's always been a confident player. But he looks very confident out there controlling the play, especially when he gets the puck on his stick. It's a nice development, and I'm sure the Sabres development staff is really pleased to see where Sardarian has taken his game this year with the move to Michigan Tech. So no production over the weekend, but still having a great start to his year regardless. Also last week on Prospect Avenue, I talked a little bit about some of the Sabres right-handed defensemen that they have developing in the NCAA. And I wanted to come back to that right-handed defenseman pool of players that the Sabres have developing, but talk about one that's up in the QMJHL this year. And that's Simon Pierre-Brunet, who's playing for the Drummondville Voltigeur, leading the way there on the blue line, pulling some really big minutes. Physical, mobile guy, 6'2", good size, closing in on 200 pounds. But the more that you watch him play this year, he's looking like a really compelling depth piece for the Sabres organization. So Drummondville right now, they're currently leading the Q's Western Conference with a record of 19-5, 1-1. They've allowed the fewest goals in the entire QMJHL, despite playing 1 or 2 more games than every other team in the league. And Brunet's defensive play has been a big part of the Voltigeur's success early this season. Truly an all situations player at the junior level, very steady. I mentioned he's got a nice physical element to his game. He uses his body along the boards and in front of the net, and he's pretty active after the whistles as well. And watching him last year, you saw a player in his draft year that you kind of knew there was more offense in his game that he had to give, and we're slowly starting to see it this season. So just some numbers with Brunet. He's got 3 goals and 12 assists for 15 points through 23 games this season. That ranks 14th, his points amongst all QMJHL defensemen. He's already eclipsed his last season point total of 14 that he picked up in 52 games. So he's set right now to more than double his offensive production that he had last year. He has 7 power play assists this year, which ties for 7th among all QMJHL defenders. And he's 5th among Q defenders with 64 shots on goal. So nice range to his game, gets around really well, physical. I don't think he's going to be a guy that when he makes the transfer to professional hockey is going to be a major point producer by any means, but he definitely thinks the game well, knows what to do. He gets it out of the zone quickly when he gets the puck on his stick. But I like the mobility and kind of the physical tones that he has to his game. He's not shy, knows how to use his body to defend, and it was worth pointing out as a follow-up to, the Maxim Sturbach, Gavin McCarthy, Adam Kleber update that I provided from the NCAA ranks last week. I want to talk quickly about the Rochester Americans. So, been a little bit of a bumpier run here for the Amerks lately. They've lost 6 of their last 7 games. Now, I know 4 of those last 7 have gone to OT. And I think when you go back to October 23rd, they've picked up a point in 10 of their last 13 games in that last month span, but losers of 6 of their last 7. And more importantly, they weren't good enough on Saturday night. They lost to a team that they in no way, shape, or form should be losing to, the Utica Comets. And that was the worst performance by far, I think, of the Amerks this season. The Utica team is just not good. In their first 13 games, they didn't have a win. They finally picked up a win in their 14th game. They come into Rochester last night having scored just 25 total goals in their first 14 games. And the Comets walk away with a 5-1 victory. They were leading 5-0 until the final minute of the game when the Amerks finally scored. You just can't lose to that team, especially when you're a team as highly skilled as the Amerks are. But when you're a skilled team, there's nights where you have to up the compete level and you got to apply some grit and play tougher. And the Amerks just didn't do that. One guy that did play tougher is a guy that I've mentioned here on Prospect Avenue previously, and that's Tyson Kozak. He was out there trying to make things happen, regularly gets to the net, just plays the game hard. Kozak was a guy, he was injured for 2 weeks, and now he's come back into the lineup, and he's gotten a fight in 2 of his last 3 games, just trying to spark the team and get the guys going. So Kozak's a gamer, just totally gets it. And I wanted to kind of highlight that because, again, Amerks are skilled, but you need more guys like Kozak, and especially Sabres prospects like Kozak. So when we talk about the draft later this year, it's going to be very clear, I think, that I'm personally going to be willing to sacrifice some skill to get more high compete size and effort. We don't know what Kozak's going to become. Right now, we just want him to stay healthy and keep developing. But I'm looking to find guys with higher NHL upside, perhaps, than what Kozak has, that have that hardness to their game. You need that style to win professionally. And the Sabres just don't have enough of those guys right now. So love the skill level that the Sabres have cultivated in the prospect ranks. Now just got to get more speed, some hardness to their game. And looking forward to talking about this year's draft class in a couple months. One last note on the Amerks. Do want to talk a little bit about Victor Neuchev. He ended his 5-game point drought Friday with an assist in Rochester's loss to Hershey. So Neuchev now, he leads the Amerks with 54 shots on goal through 17 games. He had a career high 8 shots on goal last Sunday in the Amerks 2-1 overtime loss in Toronto. He was skating on a line with Konsta Helenius and Isak Rosane before his recall to Buffalo. And then Neuchev had another 5 shots on goal in that loss to Utica on Saturday. He was playing again with Helenius, but they put Lucas Rusak up on that line. And the reason I want to talk a little bit and focus on Neuchev right now is that he has just 2 goals this year on those 54 shots. At some point, the goals are going to start to go in for him. But in terms of forwards who are regularly in the Amerks lineup, Neuchev ranks dead last with a 3.7 shooting percentage. So he had 0.2 goals per game last year as an AHL rookie. He's down to closer to like 0.1 game right now. And you want to see a little bit more from him here moving forward. He's getting the opportunities. I'm not concerned about it. Just a stat that you don't want to see. You want to see that get up a little higher, at least closer to 10% anyways, success rate when shooting the puck. So we'll be tracking that moving forward here with Neuchev. It wouldn't be an episode of Prospect Avenue unless I did a quick update on Prokhor Poltapov. Poltapov ended his 6-game goal drought on Tuesday with his 8th of the year. So he's still plugging away nicely as one of those primary motors for CSKA. We were just talking about Tyson Kozak being one of the few that shows up and plays that hard, grinding game, willingness to get to the net, get his hands dirty. Poltapov is one of the few guys that has showed up every game for CSKA this season. So having a good year. 8 goals, 17 points thus far in the year. And he's pulling some really nice even strength minutes there for CSKA. So got to keep talking about him. But hopefully this one was only a minute or so long and we can move on here and close out this week's episode. I'm not going to drone on about Poltapov like I usually do. Lastly, let's close out this week's episode of Prospect Avenue by following up on the discussion that we had about TPS centerman Viljami Marjala just last week. I mentioned how Marjala's production was cooling, had a really nice start to the year, and then the production kind of cooled a bit. Marjala had an assist this past week in each of the 3 games that he played. All of those assists were on the power play. So that brings Marjala up to 16 points on the year through his first 17 games. Those 16 points come off 3 goals and 13 helpers. So of those 16 points that he has this season, 8 of them have come with the man advantage, 2 goals and 6 assists while on the power play. When you look at Marjala's numbers, last year he had 40 points on the year, 18 were on the power play. He had 9 points in the postseason last year. 7 of them were on the power play. So what am I saying? We need more even strength production from Viljami Marjala. I'm sure that's something that the Sabres are looking for as well. Very skilled player. He's pretty seasoned at this point, playing in Liga. So you just want to see more production at even strength. Looks good with the puck, getting inside more, doing all the right things. You just want to see more. Look, don't stop producing on the power play if you're Marjala, but let's see some more production here at even strength, because I think that'll be a factor. If he can do that, the Sabres will take a long, hard look at considering him for a contract here in the final year that they hold his NHL signing rights. For comparison, when looking at the production rates at different situations, I went back and looked at some of the Amerks numbers from last year and some players year to date. Yuri Kulik, for example, last year, 15 of his 45 points with the Amerks were on the power play. So he had 7 goals and 8 assists on the power play last year. Isak Rosén, 18 of his 50 points last season were on the power play. Neuchev, as a North American rookie last year, 3 of his 28 points were on the power play. This year, Isak Rosén has 13 total points, with 4 of them coming on the power play. And Neuchev this year, just 3 of his 10 have come on the power play. So definitely something that we're going to be looking for here with Marjala over the next couple of months. Needs to increase that even strength production, no doubt. And then we're going to finish this week's episode of Prospect Avenue just with a couple quick injury updates. So in Hockey East, Jake Richard, he hasn't played since November 3rd in UConn's win over UVM. He's out with an upper body injury, and he's out a while. That's all I know right now. So he's missed right now about 3 weeks. At the time of his injury, he was co-leading the Huskies in points. So more to come on that. I don't know how long, finger quotes, a while is, but it doesn't sound like he's going to be back anytime soon. We'll see what develops there with Jake Richard. And then Noah Osselin, last injury update we had on him was on November 19th. He remains out week to week, and his absence is coming on a month now. His last action was back on October 26th, where he had 5 shots on goal in the Amerks shootout win at Cleveland. That is it for this week's episode of Prospect Avenue. It is cocktail time. As always, I thank you for stopping by Prospect Avenue. If you could please, on your way out, like this video. It helps the show. Greatly appreciated. I'm Chris Baker. We'll see you again next time.